All right, let's get started. So, hi everyone, my name is Cyan. I'm the project coordinator at Toronto Environmental Alliance for the Zero Waste High Rise project. Thank you so much for joining us today. So if this is your first time joining us, Toronto Environmental Alliance, known as T, is a local environmental nonprofit working for a greener city for all since 1988. We work on a range of issues from waste reduction, air quality, climate change, and advocate for policies and programs that protect the environment. And one of T's main ways for inspiring governments and businesses to adopt new policies is to prove what's possible through community projects like this one. Over the last 2.5 years, as part of the Zero Waste High Rise project, we worked closely with and studied the approaches of 15 buildings from all across the city on how to reduce waste in high-rise buildings. So now we're sharing what we've learned as part of a new online program for the project. And the goal is to guide more buildings in replicating all the successes we've seen so far. The online program consists of a step-by-step pathway of activities, tools, success stories, and learning events like this one to guide you in taking action in your building. And if you just recently joined the project and wanted to know more about how it works, be sure to check out the recording of the info session that we've just put in the chat. So the project is funded by the Ontario Trillium Foundation, which is an agency of the Government of Ontario. And it's in partnership with researchers at the University of Toronto. So our research partners, they help us document and evaluate the successes of the buildings we work with. And we also have funding from SSHRC, which is the Social Sciences and Humanities Research Council of Canada, for the research aspect of this work. So today is the second peer learning session we're hosting as part of the online program. And the goal of these sessions is for you to hear directly from peers, other residents and staff in leading zero waste buildings, and learn how they've achieved waste reduction. Each session will look at a key tactic for high-rise waste reduction and spotlight buildings who are exemplary at using that tactic. Today, our focus is improving access to the 3 Rs, in particular, recycling and composting. We chose this topic because we've seen how a focus on making recycling and composting easier has led to big reductions in waste in the leading buildings. So we hope today's session gives you ideas on what you can do to make recycling and composting as easy as possible in your building. So our agenda today, I'll first do a quick run through of some just general principles T has observed for improving access to the 3 Rs. So, what are common barriers and some tips for addressing them. Then I'm going to review the accomplishments of our spotlight building today, Oak Street Housing Co-op, a building that has tremendously improved recycling and composting participation. And then we're going to meet Lana, who's the property manager at Oak Street Co-op, and hear a bit about her experience. In the end, we'll have time for questions from you for Lana and myself. All right, so there are 3 key barriers that prevent recycling and composting by limiting their access. The first barrier is when the disposal options for household recycling and composting is less convenient than the garbage disposal options in your building. So for example, there might be a garbage chute on every floor, but recycling and organics may have to be carried to bins located elsewhere in the building, sometimes down to a room in the basement or even across the parking lot. And if recycling and compost bins are only available outdoors, this can be an especially big barrier. Because our winter conditions, many residents may not be able to physically reach these bins when there's snow and ice, especially if they're seniors or are mobility constrained. As a result, for several months in the years, the only option for these residents may be to place all their waste in the garbage. This barrier can be addressed by finding ways to provide household recycling and organics closer to home. So there are many ways to do this, depending on what makes sense for your community. For example, some buildings have set up a process of door-to-door recycling collection for specific residents that have mobility constraints, like seniors. In other buildings, they've made space to set up collection bins in every chute room. And as you'll hear from Lana today, another option is offering accessibility carts, where residents with mobility constraints can place their recycling and organics indoors, and that staff can then take and empty into the outdoor bins. Another barrier, regardless of where bins are located, is bins being full. So this is mostly an issue with bins for recycling. So when blue bins are full, recycling material can end up overflowing and piling up on the ground. And this creates a mess, makes the whole waste collection area uninviting, and creates a lot of unnecessary extra work for staff. It also sends a signal to community members that providing sufficient recycling space isn't a priority for the building. This can be discouraging, and some residents might choose not to add to the mess and will instead just place their waste in the garbage. And if this experience happens frequently enough, residents can easily get into the habit of just putting all their waste in the garbage because they expect the recycling bin is going to be full. So if you identify this issue, then the fix is very simple. Add more recycling bins. I've seen buildings add one new bin and then quickly realize that that new bin gets fully utilized as well. So this shows that all that additional recycling now being captured used to go into the garbage. So my recommendation is to add, 1 or 2 new bins at a time until space is no longer an issue. And whenever a new bin is added, use the opportunity to communicate with residents that recycling is a priority, so that and that the building is investing in creating more spaces for residents to recycle. And another common barrier is that the opening to recycling and organics bins may be too high to reach for many residents. Or sometimes the bin requires a lid to be opened, which can be heavy or hard to move. So the idea of a special accessibility bin is one way to address this issue. I've seen a lot of buildings place an accessibility bin right beside the main bin, and they have signage asking residents to only use the accessibility bin if they're unable to reach the main bin. Another option, like we can see in this photo, is propping up the lids so that it's always open and accessible. So here are some tips for addressing these barriers and improving access. First, it's important to take stock of what issues exist. So we recommend doing a walkthrough of all the spaces in your building where waste is collected. Note down what collection options are available, what collection options might be missing, and your observations on how convenient and accessible the options are. And to help guide you in doing this, T has created a waste collection assessment tool as part of the online program for our project. So we've just shared a link for this tool in the chat, and you can use this online tool to complete and document your assessment, and you'll receive a PDF of your submission to easily review and share your findings. And so once you're done, review your observations and identify the key opportunities for improving access. In parallel, you should also ask residents to share what barriers they face to recycling and composting, and hear directly from them what would make it easier. So there are many ways to do this. For example, you can send out a simple email questionnaire or host a virtual town hall on the topic. Whatever works for you to let residents know that you want to make it easier for them and get their input on that. And it's also important to include staff in this process, because any barriers to recycling and organics faced by residents is likely leading to extra work for staff, and staff will have ideas for how to resolve this. So, getting this input, it not only gives you really good information to act on, but it sends a clear signal to both residents and staff that waste reduction is a priority for the building. And one of the most important tips I can provide is to focus on just, a few areas at a time. All too often, I see buildings get overwhelmed by how many different areas for improvement they've identified and struggle to make progress on any one. Also, in creating new behavior, it's important for the same message to be repeated consistently until the new behavior becomes a habit. So pick, one area, 1 or 2 areas, monitor and tweak it until you've seen the desired change before you go on to a new area of improvement. And lastly, share the good news story to your staff and residents when an improvement has been measured. Directly relate the increase in recycling and compost to the improvement that was made, and thank the community for taking part. And this will really help, create a community identity that sees waste reduction as a shared value. It'll also make the community a lot more excited and open to the next initiative that you try out to improve the access to 3Rs. So Oak Street Co-op is our spotlight building today, and they've been exemplary at doing all of the above. Oak Street Co-op is a building located in downtown Toronto, overlooking the Don Valley. And the co-op has an 8-floor tower with 101 units. The tower is also connected by a tree-lined walkway to 49 townhouse units. So in the tower, they have a single chute just for garbage. And but both the tower residents and the townhouse residents have to take recycling outside and take their organics outside to bins located in a parking lot behind the tower. And this community, they joined the Zero Waste High Rise project back in 2019. They're one of the 15 buildings that T started the project with and piloted. And the building has implemented many improvements over the last year to make recycling, composting, and other diversions as easy as possible, often by putting their own twist on ideas that they learned from other buildings. So I'm just going to scan through a few of their coolest initiatives they've done in the last few months, and then we'll get to hear from Lana. So one of the great things that they've done is that they added a cart in the lobby to give residents access to recycling indoors. So residents can now deposit their recycling in clear bags that the building provides. You can see in the photo on the right that residents can pick up a new clear bag to take home every time they drop off their recycling. Staff then roll the cart outside when it's full and transfer the bags into the blue bin. In the past, staff would spend a lot of time removing contamination from blue bins, but with this new system, staff feel good because they have control. They're able to remove contamination before it gets into the blue bins and give direct feedback to residents. The program has been so widely used and popular that the building has added a second recycling cart in the laundry room. And this clearly shows the entire community that the building cares about recycling and they want to make it as easy as possible. They also added a creative option for residents to dispose organics indoors. Staff cut a hole in the wall that divides the lobby area and waste compactor room and installed a chute door there. So now residents can easily drop off organics through the chute door into a small cart on the other side. Just like with the recycling cart, staff monitor the organics cart and roll it outside to the green bin to transfer what's been collected. As a result, organics collection has been doubled. So so those are just a few of the things that I wanted to highlight, but let's hear from Lana now on how these initiatives came to be. Hey, Lana.
Hi.
How you doing today?
I'm good, and you?
Good, thanks. Thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah.
I'm so excited for everyone to get to meet you and hear from you and ask you questions directly because I think they could learn a lot. All right, so to get started, I was wondering, Lana, as property manager, why is waste reduction something that you care about?
Well, there are several layers to this. Number one, I privately care a lot about the reduction of waste and saving the environment as a whole. I grew up in a country where children are taught at a very young age about what impacts we have on our environment. I'm from Germany, and we have collected and sorted garbage like since I was born. I don't even remember anything different. So it's part of my nature. And I also I'm running a food program at the property where I live, where we divert food from landfill and give it out to our families in need. So it's part of my personality, right? That's why when I heard about tea and I connected with the problems that I experienced in our building, there was absolutely no question that we would take this project wherever it can go with the help of our members. It helps us as staff in various ways, apart from doing something good for the environment. As you said, there are a lot of cases where people recycle, they don't break up their packages properly, and then the bins fill up very quickly and everything flies all around the property and it looks like chaos, right? So that's something that our cleaner has brought to me a lot of times. Very frustrating. The other problem we did have is contamination, and yes, he had to dive into the bin to make sure that there is no inspector which would basically indicate that this whole recycling bin is now going to be garbage. So we were very eager to find a way to stop both of these problems. And we also are in a very special position as a co-op. As you said, we have a tower and we have townhouses. We also have 1/3 of our units are filled with seniors, and we have 17 units that are modified. So we do have quite a few people in wheelchairs, scooters, or other mobility devices. And there has never been a way for them to comfortably sort their garbage. Our chute rooms are not accessible. There are no automatic door openers, and they are very, very small. So there is no way for us to put any bins for recycling there.
Right.
And the same goes for the organic. So they would have to go outside in icy, wintry conditions, and they would have to open the heavy lids. So that has always been an issue, and it has never been addressed.
Right.
So as you showed on the pictures now, we found quite a good solution for both of these problems. The idea for the clear bag project came from one of the building tours that we attended. And we thought
Before going on to that specific idea, I just wanted to ask a bit more on, you know, you're saying how this has been an issue for a lot of residents. You have specific demographics in your building that struggle to, in the current system, or in the previous system before you made your improvements, easily access recycling organics. How did you, like, what was your process for getting that feedback from residents? Like, is this something that people just brought to your attention? Or I know in your building, you, in the last year, started a green committee. Like, what were the different processes that went into deciding on the things that you ended up doing?
So I heard about tea shortly after I started at Oak Street, because the co-op had applied for your program previously before I started, and they had not been accepted. But then I got an email saying that we would have the possibility to reapply. So I did, and we were chosen, and we had a general members meeting shortly after that where I announced that we were chosen. And one of our members spontaneously had the idea that we should restart a green committee that had existed years ago, but then it somehow died down. And everybody was in favor, so we formed that committee. And we have a weekly newsletter where staff shares news with the members. So I shared that, and I had a lot of feedback, also especially from our seniors and our handicapped people. And when we started the first committee meeting, we were lucky to actually have somebody in a wheelchair who told us about the challenges that he faces. And that's when we got the idea that we have to place a station to collect recyclables inside the building, and it should be in an area that is easy accessible. We don't have much space in our buildings. There is no way to put anything on the floors because our hallways are very narrow. So the only thing we were considering was the lobby. And the location of the cart, the gray cart that you showed, is right when people get out of the elevator. It's right there. And it's also a little bit hidden, so it's not like you see it from the first moment that you enter the building. So it's actually an ideal location.
Gotcha. So you, you know, you joined this project because you wanted inspiration on what you could do. You announced the fact that, you know, you're involved in this project and restarted a green committee, and kind of just putting it out there that, hey, you know, this is something our building's interested in. We're looking at opportunities to reduce waste. That kind of signaled to the community, like it brought people out to that first meeting to communicate to you their frustrations. Is that right? Am I understanding correctly?
Yeah, and especially after we put it in the newsletter, I had much more feedback from more seniors and more handicapped people who were telling me, you know, I need somebody to help me to actually recycle properly. I myself can't do it. I need a neighbor or a friend to help me do it. And it would be great if I could do it myself. Like, they do take pride in sorting the garbage themselves, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if they couldn't find somebody to do it for them, they basically just put it down the chute because they had to get rid of it somehow.
Right.
So that showed me that it's very important for these members to do it properly.
Yeah. Especially if they're taking the time to sort it and then just, it happens to be a snow day and then they gotta put it down the chute because they
Yeah.
can't get outside.
And sometimes that cardboard got stuck in our chute, and we had to call the repair company to unclog the chute, right? So
Yeah. So then, okay, so you got all this feedback, and then how did the idea of putting the cart out and the clear bags come up? What was your
so
process for getting that
the
going?
clear bag idea came from the building that we went to in Scarborough, a condo that is a real champion in the waste reduction, where the super or the maintenance staff distributed clear bags. And the reason why they chose clear bags is so that it's visible very easily for the staff if what is inside the bag actually should go into recycling or not. And by providing this door to door, nobody really had an excuse not to participate because you don't have to go anywhere. It's brought to you.
Right.
So what I did in order to somehow monitor the participation and if we were reaching the target group that we were anticipating to reach was to put the unit numbers on the bags.
Gotcha.
And when I distributed them the first time, it was wrapped in a flyer which had a picture of the things that belong into recycling so that they would know what to put in there. And they knew that we're looking at the bag. So we got a very good response rate. After a week, I got about 78% of those people in the high-rise building did put their clear bag into the cart.
Wow.
And I could see that it took the ones that are in a one bedroom longer because it's a big bag and it takes time to fill it up, right?
Okay.
But we could also see that our people in the modified units were participating. So we could see that these are the people that we actually wanted to reach, and yes, they are responding. And that was
Wow.
really important. So that's when we decided as a committee that we want to expand this program. I noticed that I saw some people from our townhouses with clear bags going inside the building and putting them in. So even though they weren't part of our initial rollout, they showed me that they want to participate. So we expanded it to our townhouses. And again, I labeled the bags. So every week they got a bag into their mailbox, and we would our cleaner would had a list, and he would put down which unit and if there was any contamination. And we barely ever had any contamination.
Wow.
So this is when the cart, the gray cart, started to fill up and overflow. And we did get a couple of complaints that it looks chaotic.
Okay.
And that's when we decided we need a second cart. And because there is no space for a second one in that location, our committee had the idea to put it in the laundry room.
Right.
Yeah. So, and we also decided we, because of COVID, that we wouldn't deliver the bags to the mailboxes anymore. So we just have them accessible right there. They
Gotcha.
can pick a new one when they drop off the old one.
Cool.
Yeah.
So you're telling me how, the resident response has been very positive and, a much larger demographic than who you initially targeted wanted to participate, and now you're facilitating that. What's the response been from staff? Are staff happy about the fact that this is going on, or does it feel like extra work for them?
So our cleaner, I think, at first thought that this is just a project for our handicapped people. So he didn't anticipate that everybody would now start to put their clear bags in there. So of course it created more work for him, even though he cherished the fact that he didn't have to climb into the bin and he didn't have to collect all the recyclables that were flying around. But I did tell him that, if there's other things that you can't get done because you're busy with the garbage now, that's perfectly fine, right? So Yeah, so that too came from a building tour that we did of a neighboring co-op,
Okay.
Hugh Garner Co-op, just a few blocks away in Cabbagetown. So they have a chute door that leads into their garbage room. And I did the building tour with my maintenance supervisor and one of our board members. And the one thing that got stuck in our head after that tour is we want to have a chute door like this too. So, you know, I was reminded, is it something we can make happen? So we had to look for a proper location because we didn't want this door to be installed somewhere where people would smell, you know, the organics, or where our cleaner would have a very hard time to transport these organics outside. So we, at the last, we agreed that the location right across from the elevators, which is the wall that the lobby shares with the compactor room, is the ideal location. And because there were pipes running in that location, we had to hire a plumber to relocate the pipes. And that's when we were able to cut the opening. Our staff is very skilled, so they were able to do this themselves. We just had to buy the chute door, and it was done. And our green committee member in the wheelchair, he helped us to make sure that we get the right height.
Nice.
So he accompanied the whole process, and you know, and they are all very happy with it. Like our handicapped people, our seniors. And again, our cleaner was a little bit surprised that it's not only the handicapped and the seniors who are using it, but I said, number one, we can't enforce who uses it, right? And number two, I'm just happy that people put this organics where they belong, right?
Yeah.
So sometimes he has to change this cart 3 times a day because that's how much. We also noted that overall the organics, the amount of organics into our outside bin has increased as well. So it's an overall effect that we've seen.
I'm not sure when the last time you had a look at it, but how full is it now? I remember when I visited a year ago, your green bin on collection day was only about like 25% full, even less.
Yeah, it's more than half now. It's
more than
more
half?
than half. Yes. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And what was the cost of that installation? So you had to buy a chute door, and then you also had to do some, you know, adjustments to the piping. What was the cost of that?
It was around $980, but it was mainly because of the pipe relocation. That alone was $500. Plumbers are very expensive, right? So the door itself was $300 something, and then we just had to buy some hardware, and then that bin. So our maintenance guys did it themselves. I think if you would hire somebody, it would cost a little bit, but all in all, I think it's very affordable given the effect that it had.
Yeah, no, I think it's awesome. It's like a really cool, you know, bootstrap, do-it-yourself solution. A lot of buildings I talk to feel like the only option to bring organics inside is to, you know, install a full chute through the entire building, which is, you know, a major cost,
Yeah,
major project. But $900 to make organics accessible for everyone is really not that bad.
and they don't have to go anywhere special because this is right on their way out. If they leave the building, right, it's right across from the elevator, and then they can go, right? Yep.
The other thing that I found very interesting about that initiative is that it happened during the late spring, summer. So in the height of the first COVID-19 wave. What motivated you and your staff to continue pushing forward on this, even during the uncertainty of those times?
We actually got some good pressure from our members because I had informed people through the newsletter that we're going to do it, and then they didn't see it and didn't see it. Then they saw the marking, like the pencil marking for a couple of weeks, and they're like, okay, what are you going to put it in? So we had to.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So there's like this anticipation for
Yep.
it.
Yep.
That's wonderful. When you launched that new organics option, what kind of communication did you put out just to make sure everyone was using it right and making sure that no one had any concerns about it?
Again, mainly the newsletter, but there was also a special flyer the day after it was installed and ready to be used, right? So everybody knew, okay, now you can go ahead, because we had installed the door, but we had forgotten about the bin on the other side. So, we had to hold off. But the day after it was ready to use, we put out a flyer, and they started immediately.
Wonderful. So yeah, from my understanding, you've done all this creative options to make recycling more accessible and organics more accessible in the last year. What was like the time period? How long did it take for you from beginning to work on this to make the recycling carts an option, and then what was the timeline to make the organics an option? Just to give an idea of
Yeah.
how quickly this happened.
So the recycling, I would say 3 months from the first thought until the bags were distributed and the cart was there, and the chute door, I would say 2 months.
Wow.
Yeah. We just had to figure out, with the piping, is it possible to relocate, and we had to figure out what blade we had to use to cut properly and this type of things. But yeah, it actually works pretty fast.
So my last question, and I'll open it up to the audience. So what's your audience? What's your residents asking for now? What's your next focus?
So our next focus is we do have this garbage enclosure for usage by our people that live in the townhouses. Because we used to have bins at every townhouse, but because they are very tight, like they're very close to each other, the co-op got rid of these bins a couple of years ago and installed a garbage enclosure. It's like a fenced area taking up 2 parking spots with 2 bins inside, which are being rolled out twice a week, so that people can get rid of their garbage. Well, they are not only getting rid of their garbage. We looked into some of those black bags that are deposited there, and they are full of organics and full of recycling. Okay. So our townhouse people, I think, will have a bigger challenge to give up that comfort of just throwing it all together and putting it in the bin. So we would like to get rid of this entire enclosure and relocate the disposal of garbage for our townhouse people into the building. And that's going to be the next major project. We have a very big parking shortage problem at our co-op. So I hope that by explaining to them, and I did that in our last general members meeting, if we get rid of this enclosure, we're basically gaining 3 new parking spots, which means more revenue. And at the same time, we're going to go the next step towards our ultimate goal, which is to convert our chute to an organic chute. That would be the next step, because we have to eliminate this putting it all in a black bag and getting rid of it. We also noticed that since we started the recycling program, these 2 bins are not full ever. So they are basically, the city is coming twice a week and they are lifting the bins, but they're not full, and we're still paying even though they're not being used, so to speak. Right. So that's our big next project. Cool.
Well, it sounds like you've laid an amazing foundation of, community buy-in and credibility for the success of the initiatives. To move ahead on that. Okay, so I'm gonna see what kind of questions we got. So we have here from Karen about, have you noticed any cost savings for Oak Street so far?
I think it's too early right now. I think we will see cost savings when we get rid of that garbage enclosure. We also noted when we had somebody clog the chute, and our maintenance supervisor was checking how full the compactor is on the day of the pickup, and it was only half full. So this is where we see the bins are less full in general, but because they still have to lift, they charge us, right?
Right.
So I think once we get rid of the garbage enclosure, we will see a big reduction.
Okay, so what I'm understanding is you guys have clearly seen a doubling of organics, at least a doubling of the organics being collected. You've also seen an increase in recycling, as well as the quality of the recycling collected.
Yeah.
And so garbage levels are going down in the bins, but because the same amount of bins are being picked up by the city, you're paying the same price. So your next step is to reduce the amount of bins you put out for collection. And then that's when you'll capitalize on the savings, right?
Once we get rid of the parking enclosure, and we can channel this garbage into our building, it's gonna be compacted garbage, right? The one in the garbage enclosure is not compacted, so it costs us more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the city only charges for garbage collection. So, you know, the more you limit the garbage being put out, that's what leads to cost savings, and you know, increasing your organics and increasing your recycling, that's completely free.
Yeah.
All right, what else do we got?
To deposit stuff in there because they don't have to touch anything. You know, with COVID, you have to, and it was very hard to open it, to slide it. So it actually worked out pretty well like that.
Okay, so even the big green bin located outside, without you know, a latch anymore, that side door, still you're not seeing any vermin get in there.
No, and there's like, I think we would see debris outside of the bin if there was some type of animal, you know. But the garbage enclosure, that's where we have the pests, like these bins, because people don't close them properly. We have the raccoons getting in and ripping up the bags and stuff like that.
Okay. We have another question. How often is your organics collected? And is the new organic chute door cleaned? Like, what's your process for cleaning and the chute door and keeping that area clean?
So the organics is collected once a week, and we haven't seen such a high increase yet that we have to increase the pickup. So I think we're like at 60% of capacity of the bin right now. So we still have some ways to go until we need more than one pickup. And as far as the cleaning is concerned, our cleaner disinfects from the outside and the inside, the chute door, and the bin is lined with a clear bag. So he just takes out the clear bag and puts that into the organics outside bin. So the bin itself stays clean at all times.
Okay. Thanks, Lana. So I see it's 4:45. We did advertise this event as a 45-minute event. So I just want to thank anyone that has to leave. We will, if you're okay, Lana, maybe get through maybe a few more questions.
Yep.
But if you got to leave, you know, thank you so much for attending. And we're going to put a link in the chat with the feedback form. We just love your feedback on, you know, what was helpful about the structure of this event and what you'd like to see going forward. So thanks again. And I'll get to a few more questions. You're a very popular guest, Lana.
Great.
Zach asked if organics are mandated for collection in Toronto. So if you have City of Toronto waste collection service, then organics is part and parcel of that service. The city only charges for garbage. They offer recycling and organics for free. And anyone with city service will have organics collection. If you have private waste collection, then it really depends on your service provider. At this point, it's not mandated that buildings have to all offer organics. It comes down to what kind of agreement you have with your service provider. A good question by Joyce, just to make sure everyone's clear. She's wondering, were the organics and recycling innovations you did pre-COVID or after COVID?
The initial steps were before COVID, but really like February. And then the rest of the rollout was, so when I was numbering the clear bags, that was still before COVID. That was in February. And then when we moved into the stage, just having them at the cart and putting the second bin, that was all during COVID. And
for the
more people were
organics?
at home, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So you're doing the numbering of the clear bags and delivering it door to door pre-COVID, and then
Yeah.
post-COVID, you transition to just leaving the clear bags out there for
Yeah.
people.
Yeah. Yeah.
The system's been understood.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then the organic chute installation, when did
That
that happen?
was
The timeline for
during
that?
COVID because we started getting the materials in February, but then
Okay.
we had to wait for the plumber to relocate the pipes. So I think we did that in April. That's when
Okay.
that was rolled out. Yeah.
And it was fully installed in April, by the end of
Yeah.
April?
Yeah. Yeah.
Cool. All right, I've got a question from Anna, who's a member of Oak Street Co-op. She says, I know in the past, oh, never mind, that's not a question. I think Anna's just answering. Christine says, how are the props for the recycling bin lids secured? So I think that's in reference to one of the photos in my slides. Yeah, so they're just like wooden planks, and I think there's like a latch inside the, like not a latch, but like a place inside the bin where you could put the wooden prop into, and it keeps the lid open, but it's completely secure. I hope that made sense. All right, that's all the questions. Thanks so much for joining us. Thanks, Lana, for being with us here
Welcome.
today.